Hi everyone, I'm Utkarsh Singh, founder and CEO Dronamaps.
Hello everyone, I'm Ayushi, co-founder and CEO Dronamaps.
So Dronamaps does 3D mapping using drones, and at the moment we are doing 20,000 kilometers of scanning of national highways using drones and AI based defect analysis across the country on a month-on-month basis. And we focus on the 3D maps and the centimeter level accuracy of data. When we started the company, at that time, I was a 23-year-old kid, so I did not know whether I should start a company or not. And I was in Indore, and I had bought a drone, and I went around trying to create a 3D model of my home, the residence that we were living in. And I made a 3D map, and it's not even right to call it a map. I made a 3D model rather of just our home, and I came down and I showed it to my grandma, whom we call Amma, and she looked at the entire 3D model, and she said, "कि ये तो हमारा घर है ना." And in that moment, and she'd never in her life looked at a satellite map before that. So when I realized that it had an impact on her immediately, and she, despite never having been exposed to any satellite data in the past or anything, that she was immediately able to pick up on the fact that, okay, yes, that this is our residence, this is our home. I think that made a lot of sense to me. It was genuinely, truly the aha moment for me.
Every now and then something would click, and it's a very satisfying feeling where you're like, okay, so there was a hypothesis, there was a methodology that had been said, and given like ABC methodology of execution, like it is working out like as you'd expected it to. And because we were working in emerging tech and AI, there were a lot of everybody knew this should work in agriculture, everybody knew this should work in mining. The question is exactly how, exactly the practicalities of it. When you do a case study, you realize that okay, so you are actually seeing a delta of being detected. So one part of it is that you are able to detect change and capture reality as it is. The second part of it is, can you influence after this point, can you make systems more efficient just because you know that things have been captured in reality now? So by having better data, does this mean, like, now if I were to talk about it, by having better data, does this mean we have better roads? And that's a question that for me is interesting. And I think for a POC, we did that. We were doing 11 highways in Gujarat, and this is about 2-3 years ago, where we were looking at potholes were detected, potholes were removed, detected again, and the total overall numbers went down by almost 80%. So for us, it was like a hypothesis, like some decisions or insights were done, based on that an action is taken, and based on that this action, something has been done on the ground, and because of it is something, or is a mechanism or a system slightly better than what it was. And I think that for me is the aha moment that I look for and work for. We had tested a little bit what creating a product together would mean, what scaling would mean, what entrepreneurship would mean, to a certain degree. But of course, nothing in college really prepares you for what it actually is in real life. And also, given that we had both never really been gainfully employed, so for us, it was a lot about the deciding of, okay, so this sounds like the sort of thing you would want to do, and this sounds like the sort of impact you would want to do at 10 years or 20 years down the line, as Utkarsh is saying, because you were trying to create something, and because we were dabbling with technologies that were fascinating to us. And to a large degree, we were looking for the right use cases over this period. So it was also a process of where you thought and also it's also a lot about trust. Would you be able to go the long run with somebody? Would you be able to put a lot of financial, career, all of these decisions that come together in your life, and all of these start making sense, particularly when you're running a company 5 or 10 years, post your 30s is when you start worrying about these things. So I suppose at that point we were young, wild and free and we started doing this when we did believe that there was a possibility of and there was a naivety that went with it and a trust that went with it.
I'll start with the core technology. When we were back at Johns Hopkins, what really sparked our interest was the high resolution mapping at centimeter scale that you can accomplish using drone data and using 3D photogrammetry. So that makes the core of our technology. When we came back to India, the first things we did was try to find the largest pieces of land infrastructure, which is industrial areas and things like that, where we can use that technology and just be able to showcase the 3D of the entire place in centimeter level accurate 3D. So industrial areas became the first use case that we did. Very quickly, we were able to realize, in fact, working with JioGenNext itself, which was the first opportunity we got for precision agriculture, very quickly we realized that mapping technologies are a very good fit for making sure that these bold and large commitments like doubling the farmer income, doubling the yield, impact-based proliferation of technology can happen really, really well. So we started developing precision agriculture. We decently scaled it, and then we realized that we massively failed at it. So trying to build a software like a Microsoft versus Apple being hardware and software, Microsoft being just software, trying to build a Microsoft akin company in India, that's a hard journey. So I think we learned some things from that, and then from there we kind of went into exploring certain other use cases. So disaster management that Ayushi mentioned before was one of the prime use cases that we did, which was very impact oriented, very response oriented. We would suddenly get an order based on the recent earthquake or a tunnel disaster in Chamoli. We deployed with NDRF. So occasions like that where there's significant loss of human life and a search and rescue effort is ongoing, and how drones can help with thermal cameras, thermal mapping, trying to find signs of life and being able to deliver on those search and rescue. So through all of these journeys, we built some, we lost some, we won some, we weren't as great on some of them. Today we are mapping somewhere like 20,000 kilometers of national highways, done every month, repeated every month. It is being done in true 3D. We use a lot of AI and machine learning to be able to detect defects, construction progress, and things like that. And all the largest infrastructure companies of the country, their billing, their payments, their audit is dependent on that entire data on a monthly basis. That happens at the scale of covering the entire country almost every month. So being able to scale up from that, tiny insignificant startup trying to dabble at technology, being excited by the voluminous data and the emerging technologies of drones and flying and aviation, and then being able to bring that into production to this stage where we are able to make a real impact, not just in the national working of the country, but also the proliferation of emerging technology on a day-to-day basis, month after month, on a continuous and repeated basis. I think that's what really, really keeps us going. Those are the major use cases that we've been able to be very successful at, and we found a very good product market fit in those areas.
When we work with drones and we call these dual use technology, so you're right, it's a Pandora's box. Whether it is AI, whether it is drones, once it has been created, it doesn't go away. No technology ever does. And what that means is that how we use it, then it becomes essentially a tool that can be used in so many different ways. And I think, as Utkarsh gave an example of how these ways are sometimes naive, but then end up sometimes becoming damaging or potentially damaging. In our case, over a period of time, I don't think it was actually an explicit choice, but it was definitely an implicit one where we knew that we are working with dual use technology. We knew that it is important how this technology would get used now and in the future. And the way we wanted to base the company and squarely have its roots in, and because we have talked a fair amount about impact till this point of time. And that was the idea, that if you are using it and if you are being one of the front runners of actually using this technology rampantly in the country, then you might as well do it right. And of course, that comes with the fact that you do have enterprises that we are working with who are helping us and do the best practices. But it also comes with the fact that there is now a regulatory framework within which the usage of this technology can be done safely. And it can actually be used in the private sector, which was not usually the case before. When we started, that wasn't the case. The lines were not so clear. And it is becoming, happily, the regulatory framework is now a lot more conducive to the innovation, but also the safety of that innovation. So Forbes, at the end of I think, it says something about you in one phrase or sentence that captures who you want to be, who you are, what you've done till this point, and which is a fairly early stage in your life. But at the same time, I do think it's also about storytelling. It's also about positioning in a certain industry. It's also about being in the right place at the right time.
No, I mean, it's a very hard journey. It's a very, very hard journey. We are still very young, Ayushi and I. We are still a very young company. But I will again quote Jensen Huang's words here. If somebody asked me to build a company again today, I would be. I mean, dil दहलता है थोड़ा सा सुनकर. It's an insane amount of risk. It's an insane amount of drive that is needed. It's an insane amount of time and fight and so many things. See, when you're talking about the privilege of being a founder, I have always called it a responsibility. And these things happen early when you're building a company. Early on, people who are in the leadership will start discussing. Some people start having conflicts. I think we've had a very good culture at our company of being able to discuss these things very freely, very openly. So, who's going to be the CEO? Who's going to be the director? Who's going to lead the charge from the front? So being a founder is not, I have always identified it as, it's never a privilege. We did not start a company because we magically wanted to start a company and build $1 billion enterprise. We started a company because we needed to start a company because we couldn't find any other thing which fit our life and our dreams and where we wanted to get 20, 30, 50 years from today, anything else which would better serve our own interests than something that we could create ourselves. So that made the most amount of logical sense to us. See, most people who would become founders are not becoming founders because somebody came and gave it to them. They're becoming founders because they took the responsibility of starting something when everyone around them would not. So it is a very bearing responsibility. If any random person today tries to think that, okay, let me just go and incorporate a company, the second question they will have is on what idea? Now, the weight of being able to strike the right idea is a very big weight. It'll take you 6 months, it'll take you 6 years, it'll take you maybe 40 years and you will find 10 good ideas and never one strong enough to be able to get convinced yourself that you should start the company. So I'll say it again, being a founder is, I have never met a founder who has appeared or been privileged to start a company. I think they've been very responsible folks who, under pressure and under trying situations, ended up creating a solution to be able to benefit the world and themselves and maybe the people around them, all of those factors.
See, the thing about decisions is like, there are two things. One is when you make a decision at any given point of time, it is with the information that you had at t is equal to 0. In hindsight, a lot of these decisions would appear wrong or misguided or could have been different. Having said that, you only knew what you knew at that period. So you try to do the best you can at that point. However, I also do feel that, particularly business in general or startups specifically, we tend to bring a lot of these this war zone sort of language to it, that we have to take a decision, it has to be done today, and we have to we bring this sense of urgency to every decision. And I do think that's slightly misguided because a lot of times some decisions are entirely coming from a state of action bias. You are essentially taking a decision because you're afraid of not taking a decision as of right now. So that is something I do feel that would potentially damage a lot of startups just because you were itching to do something, you did the wrong thing in your hurry to do something. And that ability to just look back, analyze as to essentially bird's eye view is what we call it. Have that bird's eye view, be able to zoom in on the details but also zoom out and then analyze what decision you want to take, be able to stew on it, because it takes courage. Asking for that time, that let's say I want 12 more hours to be able to think about this, I want 2 days to be able to think about it, XYZ. That asking for the time requires personal courage, because you are essentially saying that I'm gonna withstand whatever this urgency to take this decision is for this period of time. And I do think that there are some points in life where you necessarily do need to do that. The other thing is, when we grow as a company, we often lose information that is coming from the ground. one downside of actually growing or scaling is that, like, when you're young or like in a company which is very like where you're actually helping execute, you have tentacles into every piece of information that is coming in, every small be it like an insight that came from a client, a small remark, maybe even an expression. Like, those are small things you notice when you're on the ground. You have to talk to the people who are closest to the data, who are closest to the clients, because that's the only way you can learn and actually take a decision. It's the only way you can actually immerse yourself into what is actually happening and not just happening in your head.
Several years ago, Ayushi and I were working on a concept called continuous and uninterrupted rapid 3D mapping. Now, in very simple terms, that concept meant that that there's going to be drones all around us, small drones, large drones, which are going to be flying all the time, continuous and uninterrupted. When one drone goes down, the other one takes its place, and there's going to be hundreds and thousands of them capturing data all around us all the time. Is that vision, has that been realized today? Probably not. But it has been to quite an extent. I think, like Ayushi and I both discussed this point briefly, the biggest validation that we've had to our technology has been when we found a very big product market fit with our current use case, that is working with NHAI, being able to map monthly highways across the country using drones at centimeter level data and taking out AI analytics and defects. What excited me was not particularly the fact that drones are being used or that we are creating 3D maps. What really, really drives me and what really convinces me into that aha moment lately is the fact that they want to do it every month. There's some clients who want to do it 8 times in a month.
When we are looking at how geospatial and AI would move and work, I think till this point we have come at a point where all of these disparate industries, right, be it drones, be it like geospatial imaging unto itself, or be it video AI, all of them have independently made a lot of progress. Now the next frontier is to be able to bring all of this information together, like be able to take that decision as a centralized, non-siloed entity. I think that's where, like, and a lot of these obviously, like, having co-pilots for everything. So a lot of the core decision making, the data mining would go away from the human. So we are free to actually be able to use our time for better things. And that would be the curious shift that is happening. And I actually don't think it would take like 5 years or 20 years. You have already started seeing these shifts in the last like 1 or 2 years, and I think this would only accelerate in the next like 5 years or so.
It's been 8 years since we started the company, right? It's been 8 long, brutal, gruesome years of this struggle. And throughout this, we've incubated at SAP Labs, we've incubated at NASSCOM, we've incubated at Startup Accelerator India, IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, also at Johns Hopkins, and several other mentorship programs. At no other mentorship program did we have, number one, staying there for 3 months, having access to people in person, not just online on a weekly session as a mentorship session or something like that. Staying there on the Reliance Corporate Park campus, being able to interact.
Or 2 iterations.
Yeah, I think it spanned a month or 2 or something like that. Being able to be there in person, being able to interact with the leaders who have pretty much built up the country. Reliance is a huge industry which has built up the country, which has been the foundational of India, what it is today. Being able to learn from them. And then there were other people like Amay, and Prasanna. So, I mean, people like that who were just so knowledgeable and so practical about things and the way that startups get made, who could push you in the right direction and who could be brutal with you. They were very straight. Amay and Prasanna have been very, very straight with us. This does not work. Ayushi, Utkarsh, what you're thinking about, this does not work. You should think about it this way. They were very straight. They were very brutal. It was not just saying yes to everything that a delusional founder would probably put on the table. And wo jo ragad hoti hai, that grilling is, and not just grilling as a roasting session, but grilling rather in the right sense of it, the technical grilling, making sure that you can survive the due diligence, that making sure that you have substance to your depth. I think that was the most transformative incubation experience that we've ever had. So the JioGenNext program, I I would suggest that most founders in India who are probably going wrong in their companies or need that help, you need a program, a residential program, an in-person mentorship program, like the JioGenNext program.